On August 17th, 2014, Robert Limon drove to work at a remote BNSF railroad facility in Tehachapi, California, the same job he had done hundreds of times before. He was a dedicated worker, a loving father of two, and a husband of nearly 14 years. He never came home. When investigators arrived at the scene, the office was in complete disarray. Filing cabinets overturned, papers scattered everywhere. It looked like a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was missing. What investigators didn't know yet was that the man who pulled the trigger had been planning this for months. And the person who had planned it with him, who had provided the location, the schedule, and the motive, was someone Robert Limon trusted completely: his wife. Robert Limon was born in Prescott, Arizona in 1977. He was, by every account, an ordinary man living an ordinary life. And that ordinariness was something the people who loved him treasured deeply. He had met Sabrina when she was just 18 years old, and he was 21. It was, by their own description, love at first sight. They moved in together quickly, married on August 19th, 2000, and built a life together in Helendale, California, a small desert community in San Bernardino County. Robert worked for the BNSF Railroad as a mechanic and later as a rail facility worker. It was physical, demanding work in remote locations, but he was reliable, committed, and well regarded by his colleagues. He and Sabrina had 2 children together. He coached Little League. He went to church. He was the kind of man who showed up for his family, for his community, for his faith. He had a $300,000 life insurance policy, a responsible financial decision for a father of 2. It was the kind of thing a good husband and father does to protect his family. It was also the thing that gave his wife and her lover a motive. Sabrina met Jonathan Hearn while working at Costco. Hearn was younger, a firefighter, physically fit, charismatic, and deeply religious in his own complicated way. What began as a friendship developed into an affair that consumed both of them. Hearn testified they were in love and needed Robert Limon dead so they could be together and raise the Limons' 2 children. Their relationship wasn't a casual fling, it was an obsession, a fantasy of a new life together that required the elimination of the man standing in their way. What made this case uniquely disturbing was the role religion played in it. Their conversations often revolved around religion and the Bible. Hearn and Sabrina used scripture to justify what they were planning, framing the murder of an innocent man as somehow sanctioned by their faith. They spoke in code. They used a burner phone to communicate thousands of times, carefully avoiding any direct discussion of their plans in language that could be easily used against them. But their actions told the story clearly enough. Before the shooting, there was an earlier attempt, one so bizarre that it sounds almost impossible to believe. Hearn said he and Sabrina Limon, at first, plotted to poison Robert Limon by giving him banana pudding sprinkled with arsenic. Sabrina Limon placed the poisoned pudding in her husband's lunch, Hearn said, but got cold feet over fear of getting caught and told her husband not to eat the pudding because it had gone bad. Think about what that means. Sabrina Limon prepared a lunch for her husband, a man who trusted her completely, and put arsenic in his banana pudding. She packed it into his lunchbox with her own hands. She handed it to the father of her children. Then she changed her mind, not because she had a change of heart about wanting him dead, but because she was afraid of getting caught. Months later, they tried again, this time with a gun. Sabrina provided Jonathan with confidential details about Robert's remote work schedule and location, information that only a wife would have, and that allowed Hearn to plan the attack with precision. She told him when Robert would be alone. She told him where. She gave him everything he needed. Sabrina was heard sharing confidential updates from the police investigation with Hearn. Even after the murder, She was feeding him information from the investigation so they could stay one step ahead of detectives. The tire iron, the remote location, the staged robbery scene. Every element of the plan had been thought through carefully. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a methodical, calculated execution, planned by two people who believed they were smart enough to get away with it. On August 17, 2014, Jonathan Hearn drove a motorcycle to the remote BNSF railroad facility in Tehachapi, where Robert Limon was working. He was wearing a red bandana over his face. He carried a large caliber handgun. He shot Robert Limon dead at his workplace. Then he staged the scene to look like a robbery, overturning filing cabinets, scattering papers across the floor, and rode away on his motorcycle. Investigators initially suspected a robbery gone wrong because the scene was in disarray, but no items were missing. That first inconsistency, a staged robbery where nothing was actually taken, was the crack in the story that would eventually bring the whole thing down. The investigation stalled initially. The staged robbery scene was convincing enough to divert attention. But then two things happened that changed everything. First, surveillance footage captured an unidentified man on a motorcycle near the scene. Second, an anonymous tip came in about an affair between Sabrina Limon and a man named Jonathan Hearn. Detectives began monitoring their communications. What they found was extraordinary. Sabrina was heard sharing confidential updates from the police investigation with Hearn, which gave police probable cause to issue arrest warrants. The two were using their burner phone to align their stories, to discuss what detectives knew, and to coordinate their cover-up in real time. At Jonathan's home, police recovered a motorbike, matching the one seen on the CCTV footage. They also found a red bandana, identical to the one worn by the suspect, identified in the footage. The evidence was building. But investigators needed more to make an airtight case against Sabrina specifically. She hadn't pulled the trigger, and she was maintaining her innocence completely. The case against Sabrina Limon cracked open in January 2017, when Jonathan Hearn accepted a plea deal. Having already pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter, attempted murder, poisoning, and accessory charges, Hearn was sentenced to 25 years and 4 months in prison, with the possibility of early parole. In exchange, he agreed to testify against Sabrina, and testify he did. On the stand, Hearn described every detail of what they had planned together: the arsenic pudding, the motorcycle, the staged robbery, the burner phone conversations, the $300,000 life insurance policy they planned to collect. He described Sabrina's involvement at every stage. Evidence independent from Hearn's testimony conclusively connected Sabrina with Robert's murder. The prosecution established that she was deeply in love with Hearn, both before and after he killed her husband. Sabrina Limon took the stand in her own defense. Her testimony, her own attorney would later say, was nothing short of abysmal. She denied everything, denied knowledge of the murder plot, denied the poisoning attempt, denied any role in her husband's death. The jury didn't believe a word of it. On February 21, 2018, Sabrina Limon was convicted on 4 of the 6 counts against her: first-degree murder, attempted murder, solicitation of murder, and conspiracy. She was acquitted of the alleged poisoning attempt. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. In the courtroom after sentencing, Robert Limon's family spoke. His sister Lydia Marrero addressed the court with the grief of someone who had watched a loving brother be reduced to a name on a case file, a man who had gone to work one morning and never come home because his wife had told another man exactly where to find him. Sabrina Limon maintained her innocence. She filed an appeal. She took her case to the California Court of Appeal, then to the California Supreme Court. In January 2023, the California Supreme Court denied a petition to review her conviction. Every avenue of appeal has now been exhausted. Now 45 years old, she is serving her sentence at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. She will be eligible for parole in 2033. Jonathan Hearn, the man who actually pulled the trigger, received a significantly lighter sentence than Sabrina because of his plea deal and cooperation. He is currently incarcerated at the Ironwood State Prison. His parole suitability hearing is scheduled for November 2028. He will potentially walk free in 2 years, while the woman who planned the murder alongside him serves a longer sentence. That disparity has never sat comfortably with Robert Limon's family. The man who drove a motorcycle to a remote railroad yard and shot their brother and father in cold blood could be eligible for release while his victims' children are still growing up. So after arsenic in a banana pudding, a staged robbery that fooled nobody for long, a burner phone with thousands of messages, and a lover who eventually testified against the woman he claimed to love, do you think Sabrina Limon deserves to be released on parole in 2033? And do you think Jonathan Hearn's sentence was fair, given that he was the one who pulled the trigger? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one, and the best theories shape which case we investigate next. Subscribe to Case Closed Files and turn on notifications. New cases drop every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for investigating with me. I'll see you in the next one.